going to go ahead and get going. Can you hear? Diane, can you still hear me? Okay, thanks. All righty. Well, good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Frasca, and I'm a emeritus. What? You can't hear me now? All right. Does this work? No. Now. Oh my gosh. Whoa, thank you. Thank you. So I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands, so it's really hard to only have one, you know? So anyway, all righty. Okay, well, my name's Cheryl Frasca, and I'm President Emeritus of Commonwealth North's board and a current board member. I don't seem to know when to quit. And as Juanetta, she puts together these remarks, and she then described me as a longtime unreformed dabbler in state fiscal policy. So I try not to be too offended by that. And I do think it does relate. I've spent a lot of time in my professional life working on state budgets and municipal budgets. I've worked for 2 governors, 3 Anchorage mayors, and spent 13 years working for legislators on the finance committee or in leadership. And so I guess dabbling unsuccessfully would be a better description. So our current board chairman, Tom Barrett, is here joining us today, and we appreciate his leadership that he's going to bring to us for this upcoming year. And also hello to our guests. We are Zooming this, so we do have folks online as well. And so we also want to thank our 2 volunteers, Carol Anderson and Margaret King, who I think may have just stepped out, but they're the ones you meet when you come in at the front door, and we do really appreciate their help. So even if they might not be in the room, let's give them a round of applause. And we also want, gosh, I feel like we're doing all these advertisements. Always, okay. Also, we want to thank our sponsors, which you know the drill. We wouldn't be able to do what we do if we didn't have our sponsors. And for 2023, we especially want to thank Alaska Communications, ConocoPhillips, the Institute of Social and Economic Research, and North Rim Bank. But we're always open to add more businesses to the list. So if you would like to become a sponsor of a program or an event, please see Juanetta. And then finally, we're also a membership organization. And so if you're a Commonwealth North member, please raise your hand. So, well, good. For those of you who haven't yet raised your hand, you too have an opportunity to join. You can do so by seeing Juanetta, or if you're online, you can be a member too, and you can go to Commonwealth North's website to join us. But we do have a number, we're a little bit different than most organizations in that we do our work through study groups. And having Senator von Imhof here today is kind of an outcome from the work that we've done as a study group, the Fiscal Policy Study Group, which might be a surprise that I'm one of the co-chairs. But we welcome your participation. Also want to welcome, we still call her Senator, but Senator-elect Giesel, who's been a participant with us over the years in our study group, and we've really appreciated that. And, you know, I hate to admit it, but there's these new legislators that I don't know necessarily, trying to learn. So if you're one of those, would you put your hand up? Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Senator-elect, currently House Rep. Thank you. Welcome for coming today. Any others? All right. Cool. Well, thank you. We hope to work with a number of our legislators during this legislative session on fiscal policy issues. So now for our guests. Today we have Senator von Imhof, who's still a senator for what, 5 more days? And we're pleased that she decided and chose to do her final presentation about budgets to our organization. As we all know that, or most of us pay attention to this, that next Tuesday, the legislature is going to adjourn. Some might wish, but they're going to convene down in Juneau. And for maybe 90 days, 120 days, they'll wrestle with what to do, how to pay for it, and the consequences of those choices. With a large number of first-time legislators, a large bipartisan majority in the Senate, and as yet a House organization, the session is poised to start with the usual anticipation, questions, and portent. I had to look up, Juanetta wrote that word. I had to look up what it meant and how to say it. I don't know what that means, but that I had to look it up. But anyway, so our program today offers a preview of some of the fiscal issues that the legislature will be dealing with. So Senator von Imhof was first elected in 2016 from Senate District L in South Anchorage. During her 6 years in the legislature, she served and co-chaired the Senate Finance Committee, as well as the Legislative Budget and Audit Committee. Prior to serving in the legislature, she worked as a financial analyst, led the Atwood Foundation, a bank manager, as we just learned in Juneau at Lemon Creek branch, and was a commercial loan officer. She currently serves on the boards of the Rasmussen, Atwood, and Seattle Children's Hospital Foundations. Her family is deeply rooted in Alaska, fourth generation Alaskan, born and raised here in Anchorage, graduated from Harvard College and received an MBA from the University of Washington in 2007. On behalf of Commonwealth North, please join with me in welcoming Senator von Imhof.
Okay. Hopefully this is on, and let's see. So Cheryl, you have all your notes up here. Let's go. Let's move them over here. Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. This is my last presentation as a senator. This is very exciting. I think that both Rudy and the dog are really happy that I'm not going to Juneau next week. But I do want to say, public service has been incredibly gratifying, incredibly frustrating, incredibly rewarding in so many ways. And I'm glad that we have folks here that are serving. Randy Solt, thank you for the assembly. Representative Chuck Kopp, thank you. I enjoyed working with you those 4 years. Kelly Merrick, good luck. Senator Giesel, I wish that I'd be working with you again, but alas, it's not in the cards. And then, of course, we have from the governor's office, Dave Steeren. I really appreciate you being here today. And last but not least, well, my wonderful husband is here, and my chief of staff, Shireen, is here. And without the two of them, I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done the last 6 years. So thank you. Really appreciate it. So, new slide. Or do we have any slides? Okay. So I'll start. So we have a lot of fresh faces. I think there was, what, 20 new legislators elected overall? There's a lot. And so I think today, hopefully this will kick off the budget discussions. I think we're going to take our collective wisdom and maybe provide a framework, kind of talk about where we've been, where we are now, and kind of how's that worked out for us. Okay, how's that worked out? So let's do a new slide. All right, so we're going to get started here. Is there a way to, oh, there we go. Okay, so it's a very, very pretty area graph here. So the most important thing, of course, is the brown. That's oil. This is the last 10 years UGF, so unrestricted general fund revenue from fiscal year 13 to 23. So you can see oil, really a big deal. And then it just plummeted in 2016, 17, it sort of bumped along a little bit. And then we've had an uptick in 2023. During that time, that purple, that's the CBR and SBR draw. So those are all of our savings accounts that we drew down in order to balance the budget during the mid to late teens. In 2019, we passed the POMV, that's the 5% draw, market draw on the permanent fund. So that's the green. So that's kind of been our pretty significant source of revenue since 2019. Then the blue, that's everything else. That is like fisheries taxes, alcohol taxes, marijuana taxes, tobacco, motor fuel, you name it. So to me, what is so interesting is that you can double, triple, quadruple, whatever you want, the blue line, and it does not hold a candle to oil. And petroleum is its own special, unique commodity. It just is a league of its own, and it is very material. And I'm going to say that because it's going to permeate the entire presentation. So in 2023, right here, and these are the new budget numbers that just came out in December. The POMV and the permanent fund and the oil, both are at 46% each contributing to the budget. So it's basically half and half. Everything else in the blue line is about 6%. Okay, so keep that in mind. Next slide. So now what we've done is we've overlaid on the revenue the expenses per administration. So you start out with agency spending is blue, the blue bar. Okay. So the blue bars were higher under the Parnell years. He had more revenue. Walker came in, had to cut quite a bit. Dunleavy's kept it down as well. So the agency spending has been bumping along a little bit. But here's what's happening. Some of the departments are having difficulty functioning right now. People are jettisoning. You've got the great resignation. You have in the private sector, you have in the public sector. So there's been some discussion about putting money back into the agencies. But I would argue, rather than just carte blanche, okay, we're just going to go raise everything by 4 or 5%. We have inflation. That's another issue that we'll talk about later. But one of the things that we talked about even when Senator Giesel and I were in office together was to go in with the governor, who has all the commissioners working for him, to look at each of the different agencies and say, how you doing? Do you have the tools that you need? How are you measuring success? Are you measuring activities or productivity? Do people even know who their boss is? Do people even know how they're accountable? Do they have periodic reviews with their productivity or just with their performance? I think you'd find this much information that's wildly vast. These agencies do need money. They've been languishing, but I think it needs to be strategically spent or strategically allocated to the high performing, someone owes us donuts, to the high performing or the high needed areas, meaning, for example, where people are trying to get permits at the Department of Natural Resources, they're languishing. Maybe we need more money specifically there. If people are trying to do Medicaid eligibility, maybe we need technology there. Maybe teachers. We're really having a hard time trying to find teachers. What do we do about that? I think there needs to be some type of, I can't remember who's chairing. Is it Loki who's chairing the Senate? Okay, so Loki hopefully will look into this and see what can we do for education specifically. So moving on here. So Parnell had the biggest budgets, particularly in capital, which is gray, and oil and gas tax credits, which is red. So when Walker took office, as you can see, the oil revenue plummeted, and he had to take a lot of money from the purple, which is the CBR. So he cut everything, particularly the big ticket items like oil and gas tax credits, the capital budget, and of course the PFD, which is in yellow. Forgot to mention that. So in 2019, as you can see, we passed the POMV, and here's what's really important. See how the permanent fund is above? Because it was paid off balance sheet. It was paid directly by the permanent fund. Here with the POMV, the dividend became the 18th agency. It competes with all the other funding, just like everything else. Bill Wielechowski challenged that and lost his court case. So now the permanent fund is paid by general funds. And believe me, we discuss that every time. So as you can see in 2023, revenue spiked. Biggest permanent fund dividend in history. And now with the new numbers, we're underwater. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here's 2023, what we're in right now, just kind of a closer look. So the yellow bar, of course, is the PFD. The blue bars is everything else. You can see the magnitude of the permanent fund dividend as compared to everything. It was a record-breaking $3,200 per person, $2.1 billion. Okay, next slide. So here are the last 4 years' budget. The PFD, of course, is in the far left. And is consistently in the top 3 expenditures, and is sometimes the same value in millions or billions of dollars of dozens of agencies combined. So I have voted for all of these budgets. Press the green button. Keep in mind that in the middle of 2020, several of us ran for re-election. And I ran on a balanced budget, a sustainable PFD, and a spending cap. And if you recall, I almost lost my primary. Initially, with the first round of voting, I was behind, and it wasn't until the absentee ballots were voted or counted that I got ahead. Senator Giesel lost her election. Senator Coghill lost his election. They were replaced with 2 far-right PFDers, full PFDers. The person who ran against me was also a far-right PFDer. So when the electorate elects people who want to vote for the highest PFD possible, then the legislature has a really tough time negotiating a more balanced budget. And so billions, millions, if not billions of dollars have gone towards the PFD over the last several years. So how has that worked out for us? Next slide. Alaska scored dead last in the 2021 CNBC poll and second to last in the 2022 poll as the worst state to do business. In 2021, they said Alaska is in a hardcore survival mode. Next slide. In that same CNBC poll published this past July, Alaska ranks as #1, the worst state in the union for infrastructure. We received an F grade. Why? Because our capital budgets have been anemic. We don't prioritize deferred maintenance. We don't prioritize building stuff to attract new business investment. We don't prioritize investing in cheap energy. Next slide. And this has been going on for years across various administrations. Back in 2017, the Walker administration hired the Boston Consulting Group to analyze and report how to increase and expand economic development opportunities in Alaska. Interesting. So Bill Walker did this study. I think he spent about $500,000 for it and got it in draft form. I got my hands on the draft form, and I don't think it went anywhere after that, which was a shame because it was a phenomenal study. I urge the Dunleavy administration maybe to dust it off, maybe consult with Boston again, see if they can update it. It was excellent in my opinion. The report said Alaska scores poorly on national rankings of different business effectiveness. There's a lot of things we can do differently. Some of it we can try to touch today. Okay. So there's been discussion lately, especially in the spending cap arena, about the gross domestic product. So this is the measurement of GDP, gross domestic product, over the last decade. And this measures the total economic productivity and output for the state. How much money do we spend on mining and oil and gas and transportation and finance and insurance, real estate, government, natural resources? And you can go on the Bureau of Economic Analysis and you can find this information for all 50 states. So what I've done is I look at Alaska, which is in red, and it underperforms our peers in most years past. Since 2011, Alaska has either had lesser growth, we're like the lowest, okay, or we have fallen below the zero line, which means we've had declining GDP in several years, while our peers have consistently been above the line. And this is Idaho, Montana, Nevada, South Dakota, and Utah. Every state, of course, spiked positive after COVID. Here's 2020, 2021. In third quarter of 2022, most states consistently growing between 11 and 14%. Idaho is doing really well. That's the orange line. They spiked off the charts. I was like, I'm not gonna change my scale for Idaho. There's 2 other oily states, which I don't have on here, and those are Texas and North Dakota, and they grew in 2022 at 17 and respectively. Alaska grew at 13%. Not bad, but I believe there's potential left in the table. And especially when oil is contributing to nearly one half of our revenue, it is still a significant contribution to both our GDP, because you can follow a lot of this has to do with oil. We just need to, my opinion, my recommendation is rev up the other stuff. Okay. Next slide. So in addition to GDP, it's important to look at several other matrix to vector and create a more comprehensive picture. So here's Alaska's job recovery rate pre and post pandemic. This chart shows that Alaska's job recovery rate is at the bottom. All of our peer states are on top. One of the reasons why is because our working age people are leaving the state. Next slide. This is a population decline since 2012. Working age Alaskans. They're leaving Alaska because there are better jobs, better opportunities, better housing, better broadband outside of Alaska. Next slide. Here is the same data shown a different way. This chart was printed in the Anchorage Daily News in mid-November. This is from the US Census Bureau. This is from 2015 through 2021. Our peer states, Idaho is on top. Montana, Nevada, Utah, see them all right there. Alaska is at the bottom in orange. It's decreasing more than any other state in the union. People are moving to our peer states and they're buying homes and they're raising families and they're starting businesses. People in Alaska are apparently taking their permanent fund dividend money and running. And they've been doing it for a while. Next slide. What does this all mean? The dividend remains the top 3 expenditures consistently. It dominates the budget discussion above nearly anything else. It is so difficult to get down to Juneau and talk about anything else. What have been those economic impacts of our budget choices? What do you see when we allocate millions and billions towards paying a dividend at the expense of infrastructure, workforce development, housing, mental health, education, roads, trails, deferred maintenance, public safety, the list goes on. People leave the state looking for better opportunities. Alaska scores the worst of all 50 states to do business. The GDP falls behind our peers. What do we want to do about it? First and foremost, we must solve the dividend. We need 21 and 11 votes in the legislature to pass a new formula that is affordable and sustainable over time. Second, we need to estimate revenue accurately. What is our actual revenue, not what we wish the revenue to be. And you'll see that in the next slide. Third, I recommend we pass a spending cap that includes the dividend underneath it. My opinion, I've been advocating that since running in 2016. And I've run a couple bills. I've been consistent in that way. This way, when oil goes up or down each year, the PFD is not chasing it. Fourth, invest in bridges and roads and job training opportunities and housing and K-12 education in strategic areas, the university, public safety, low-cost energy projects like hydro. Let's build the bridge to nowhere, so someday it will go somewhere. And lastly, what is the vision for the state? Do we want to focus on green energy, tourism, being the global transportation hub, Arctic studies, strategic military location? All of it, in my opinion. Okay. So we're going to start with the permanent fund. This, I think, is important. Every $500 check you get in your checking account costs the state $320 million. So 640 million is $1,000 check. So just always do the math in your mind. $1,000 check would fund 11 state agencies' general fund budgets, and it would fund the 19, 20, 21 capital budgets combined. In 2023, the PFD was $2.1 billion. Everyone says, well, $3,200, who cares? It's $2.1 billion. Of a total UGF budget of 7.6, 27% of the entire budget was given away. And pretty much either given to the federal government in form of taxes or taken with people as they moved out of the state. I land, in case anyone's wondering, and they want to blog about it, 640 million, around $1,000 check, somewhere around there. That's it's an 80-20 split with the POMB. That's what I think is affordable over time. Okay, next slide. Here's oil. Here's the ANS North Slope crude oil for the past decade, 2013 to the present. Obviously, it's been all over the map. 2013, $100, went down to like 20 bucks, went up to like 60, 40, 60, plummeted in COVID, and then it shot back up. And we built a budget on that line, $101 a barrel. So when prices spike, people hope it's the new normal. Both the governor and the legislature, taking full responsibility, base this current 2023 budget, and we're in right now on $101 a barrel. Now there's budget tricks, which we did, which I will tell you on that. But my point is, look at that. Next slide. So here's the fiscal year in right now. This is oil from July 1st to now, basically last Monday. There's 101, kind of gone down, but have to spike up pretty hard and stay up there in order to get the value. And the governor's office is like, I don't think that's going to happen. So because on the December 15th, they downgraded it, rightly so, to about $88.45. So there is a significant revenue gap for 2023, and the legislature is going to have to deal with that. But one of my last slides briefly addresses that. But the point is oil is very volatile. And at 46% of our budget, it is material. Next slide. So here's what the volatility means. So I took the Department of Revenue fall forecast of 12/15, and I put it at 0. Big black line, okay? And for 2024, it's $81, okay? When it goes up $1 to $82 or goes down $1 to $80, it's a swing of $70 to $100 million to the budget. $1, okay? So what I did is I did $10 up, $10 down, and it's between 700 to $1 billion. Either way, so there's a $2 billion spread, $20. Well, $2 billion, that's a lot of money in our accounts or in our budget. So what happens is the legislature plans the budget. There could be big swings or up or down. So don't chase revenues. Have a spending cap in place, and the revenues are going to do this. So spending is separate from revenue. So spending can be disciplined regardless of revenue fluctuations from one year to the next. So next slide. Okay, so this is a slide that I pilfered from a presentation I did a couple years ago. It is not updated. Do not hold me accountable to this over here, okay? I didn't have time to update it. This is from 1980 to 22. Green is revenue. Red is what we expended. The black line is the spending cap or the appropriation limit in the Constitution now. It's too big. The growth is unrealistic. It's not, it's useless, in my opinion. These two lines are what one of my bills were proposing earlier, using a function of population change and CPI. Now, 28 states have what we call a tax and expenditure limit, and they generally use their spending caps based on the income tax or the statewide sales tax that they collect, because that's probably the most accurate measure of economic activity. And we don't have an income tax, state income tax. We don't have a state sales tax. So our options are either GDP, or population and CPI, which other states sometimes use as well. You saw with GDP, we kind of go up and down a lot. And if the price of oil goes up, then we spike. Price of oil go down, we fall. What this shows is, I think it was like 75% population and 25% CPI or something like that. So you can see that would be the proposed spending cap. And I know Mark Foster and I worked on this, and we were in the office together, among other things. And I know other commissioners of revenue, Larry Pursley and I, and so forth, have worked on this. So it's material. Look how much we would have saved. Look how much we would have, not spent so much. But here's the challenge. What if revenue goes really high and we don't have anything in place to say, well, okay, let's take the pressure valve off. The next slide. So in the event there is a surplus, you have a spending cap in place. What we do is you have something called a waterfall. And you put like certain percentages. You say, okay, if we have a really big, you don't put dollar values, you put percentages. We'll put a certain percentage back in the savings, a certain percentage for funding education, which is what we did this year to help balance the budget. A certain percentage in debt or retirement, maybe in energy projects, maybe more, you put a certain percentage in capital projects. And what I didn't have here, put another percentage in the dividend, sure. But it's got to, it's the same as everything else. It's not like all of it goes to dividend. You got a lot of important stuff here. So have a pressure relief valve that you put it in statute that certain amount can go to certain things, but you got to put some money back. Got to put some money back into the CBR. It's pretty depleted right now. Okay, next slide. So let's look at coming attractions. Here's fiscal year 23, where we're in right now. With the new revenue, we're underwater by almost $1 billion. But what we did is we put 1.1 billion towards forward funding, K-12. So we're just going to eat into that. So forward funding is just going to go down pretty much all of it. So we're not in dire straits yet. Good news. But I'm sure there's going to be supplementals, things that were short funded. In years past, we've had earthquakes, whatever. Hopefully we don't have that. But this is how we handled it this past year. Here's the governor's 2024 based at 81. He has agency operations. He dropped it a little bit. I'm worried and concerned about inflation. He's, these debt service and so forth, these are kind of a given. He has capital from 735 million to 276. I think it's a little light. Dividend, 2.4 billion. $275 million deficit. So there is so this is a starting spot. The legislature will do what the legislature does, which is we'll take this like a 52 card pickup, throw it all up in the air and rebuild. I hope to see significant cooperation between the governor and the legislature on a regular basis, because each entity brings their own unique perspective to the process. The governor has the inside track on each of the different departments, what they need, what they don't need. The legislature, of course, has more of a contact with the people. Both are valuable and both need to work together. What gives me a little bit of indigestion is when the governor puts this out and says the legislature will deal with it. Please no, please have the governor and the legislature meet on a regular basis and both come to the table. Here's Natasha's recommendation. I was queen for the day. Same revenue. I'd probably put another 5% in agency operations, just because of inflation. And Neil Freed actually gave me some slides, of which I have at the end of it, to kind of shows inflation. I think we need at least 5%. I think it's going to be a problem if we don't have some money. Everything else is roughly the same except capital. I put about 500 million. There's a lot of opportunities with this federal money coming in. There's a lot of matching opportunities. Let's be strategic with low cost energy, with specific roads in certain places. I have the dividend, which I think is around, it's fair, about $1,000. And it gives us $1 billion surplus. What should we do with that money? Next slide. What is a vision? Invest in Alaska. Let's build a better future for our kids and grandkids. Not 2 years from now, not 2 decades from now, but let's set it up for 2 generations from now. Alaska has place in tourism, energy, and the location on the globe. And that's transportation in the Arctic. And of course, military. We got a lot. I was to recommend build that long trail with all the huts, and I call them refugios because Rudy and I were just in Chile, and that's what they call them, like these really cool hostels and stuff, and cabins and whatnot. People are moving. Since COVID, people are traveling now. Alaska has space. We have clean air. We have lots of cool stuff to see. There's war in Ukraine and Russia. They want to come to Alaska. Let's be the tourism destination. Let's build a Trans-Eagle Glacier for snow skiing. With this whole climate change, people are scraping for snow. All these ski teams and so forth for the Olympics. Let's build a Trans-Eagle Glacier that's in Birdwood, by the way. And let's build, a 2 to 3 mile loop up there. They've got a little bit of a loop there. But I mean, when you go to Europe, tram, you get a trip over the trams, right? Let's have some trams here. We've got the Seward Dock expansion, a public-private partnership. Let's do more of that. That's doing well. Denali Visitor Center in Talkeetna. We got a great visitor center in Healy, but it's crowded sometimes, and sometimes it diminishes the experience. Let's do another one. The governor's very first year in office, he proposed a $25 million visitor center. Let's resurrect that. But maybe let's not the state pay for the whole thing. Let's do a public-private partnership. Let's get Holland America. Let's get the state parks. Let's get, Royal Caribbean. Let's get the state to do some of it. Let's get ADA to come in there. We can do this. Then we're going to build a bunch of trails. Then it's going to connect to the long trail. Let's expand the pie. Green energy. Let's get that FERC license. Let's get it. And the Aleutians, there's so much geothermal in the Aleutians. And what's happening now is you take this geothermal and you turn it into hydrogen via ammonia. Then you stick it in the ship and you ship it over to Japan, where they turn it from ammonia back into hydrogen. That stuff's been happening for the longest time. Let's do that. Aleutians is hard to fly into, but that's where some of the opportunity is. If we're going to be building a ton of batteries and California is going to have all electric vehicles by 2030, they're going to need cobalt and copper. Alaska's got a lot of it. Icebreakers, the ports in Nome, military training, data farm on the North Slope. When every single time you take a selfie or you tweet, that data's got to go somewhere. Do you want it to go in a foreign country, or do you want it to stay in US soil? We need to have northern countries and northern areas where they have access to land, access to a good runway, access to an energy source where it's cold, and redundant, what is it called? Fiber optic. Turtle Bay's got that. Got natural gas, it's cold, got a data farm. Global e-commerce distribution center. We're kind of doing that a little bit with Amazon. Let's keep doing it. Let's get more. Walmart. They all need distribution centers. And of course, I had to put a plug in here. When society wants more housing, and we need it all across the United States, and we need teacher housing, and we need trooper housing, and we need affordable housing, we need transitional housing, we need senior housing, we need housing. What do they build housing out of? Plastic? No. Are they building them out of steel? Some. But a steel smelting plant is not very climate friendly. We need wood. You need wood to build. What does Alaska have? A lot of freaking wood. So why can't we work with our federal delegates, work with our local communities, and resurrect the logging industry in some form or fashion? It's great jobs, and everyone needs wood from all over the world. Okay, and that's it.
All right. Okay, go back to that other slide.
Okay, slide is up. Okay.
The list of your projects.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna ask you to go sit over there and Cheryl, there's my.
Oh, God.
And you have blue cards on your table, so you can write out your question.
Okay, whoa. If you'll go back to that chart, this list, that's great. Let's say we did all those, what's the return to the state's treasury?
Well, I'd need a couple days and,
No, you don't. Because, I mean, tourism, there's no state sales tax. Local communities benefit because they have a bed tax and a sales tax. You don't need to put that on a spreadsheet. A tram, same, there's tourism. What?
what would be, so
The first part of your presentation was all about balancing the budget. And then certainly economic opportunity brings a hell of a lot of jobs, which is great, tourists, which is great. But then, the challenge is how do you use that to also at the same time provide the state services?
So this is the conundrum. When you don't have a statewide sales tax or a statewide income tax, and your sources of funds are either the permanent fund and or oil, if all the money that you make and you want to put it back into state services, then build the permanent fund to $100 billion. I mean, if you want to expand the treasury, then any money that you make goes into the permanent fund because that's our main revenue source. The other that's a statewide. I think local property tax and sales tax is also meaningful, and jobs for just economic churning that provides the GDP, which just provides, I mean, the other thing, Cheryl, is to look at what do we want? Is it all about money or is it quality of life? Is it about opportunity? I would like to be able to go to the trails and have a parking spot. And I'd like to have my dog poop, have a thing so I can pick it up. And I'd like to have more than just 2 trails up here. I'd like to have maybe 5 or 6 other options. And so if we invested for tourism, then the locals will hopefully benefit as well.
Sure. I understand connecting the dots, but it was connecting the concerns with the desired results. Okay. Are your charts inflation adjusted?
No, what I did is I took the exact dollar figures from ledge budget and ledge finance from the actual number. So no.
Huh.
Sorry about that. I'll do that next time.
So, and speaking of numbers, you focus on unrestricted general fund. I hope I don't get too anal here. Okay, but about half of the agency budgets or more are funded by designated general funds, which aren't even appearing on those charts. Is there a reason why you move those off the table? Because the spending lobby's been so effective at protecting their source of revenue. That wasn't a bias or anything on my part.
So Cheryl, you and I, we've talked about this before.
Yes, we have.
And DGF, designated general funds, is about, it's less than $1 billion a year. And we can go check those numbers. So it's less than $1 billion. The UGF is about $4.5 billion. So it's markedly bigger. There isn't a lot of opportunity for us as legislators to really change designated funds. If we pass a statute that says part of the marijuana funds has to go to child mental health programs, and that's where it goes. I mean, if the university collects tuition, it goes to the university. If Fish and Game collects, licensing fees, it goes to Fish and Game. Could I add more money to, or could I include DGF? Then I just think it kind of gives it a false sense of what the legislature really has control over.
So noted.
That's Cheryl's diss.
Yeah, okay. All right. What about how much, you talked about if we wanted to increase oil revenues, or some do want to increase revenues, how would the state increase oil revenues?
Well, we've talked about this with a public forum. It's just maintain taxes and have them consistent over time, which so far we've been doing. Number one. Number two, of course, some of the issues that you're seeing now is access to these landlocked leases. That's the next issue du jour. How is it Santos trying to access land that Conoco's build a road on? I don't have an answer for that one. But I think it's more of, you know, holding lease sales, providing consistent workforce development so people can actually work up on their slope, as well as the environmental inspections, the permitting fees and whatnot, and then the regulations, just keep them consistent and predictable.
Okay. So how much revenue, what are the estimates of how much revenue could be generated by an income and or a sales tax?
So it's hard to say. I think that a 1%, and Larry, where's Larry? Okay, so Larry wants to take this, because you might remember. Yeah, Larry says no. Okay, I think 1% was about 300 million.
1% sale,
Yeah.
depends what you exempt. I think less than that, more like 150 to.
So if you exempt nothing, it was about a couple hundred million. If you don't accept food and medicine, then it gets down to about 150 million. So just to repeat that, a 1% statewide sales tax exempting nothing is about 200 million.
Net?
Is that net?
Yeah, after. Collection costs are not that high.
Collection costs, yeah.
They're in millions, not tens.
So that's one. And then the other thing, the other one with income tax, I don't remember it being that much, as in it was probably more in the 400 million, and it completely depended. There was, literally was spaghetti against the wall. Are we doing a function of the federal taxes paid? How many exemptions are we going to allow? And are we going to, scale it up like this, or is it going to be consistent? There was talk about clawing back some of the permanent fund dividend, as in these are just backroom, conversations that we're having over the dinner table kind of thing. I don't think we never proposed a budget, or excuse me, the Senate, I know, never proposed a bill, or at least I don't think it reached the floor, and it failed on a vote of an income tax.
All righty. Okay, the next lesson between the next meeting is going to be handwriting. Either that or I need better glasses. Okay, all righty. How do we get our kids to come back home after college? What do you propose?
So this is the conundrum, because Rudy and I, we have Lisa and Nick who are 20 and 23, and we're hoping that they come back at some point. But the job that Lisa may want to have is in medical research. And I'm just using it as an example. I mean, how much do we have medical research? Do we have some of these really cutting edge jobs in Alaska? Hopefully we can attract that kind of, technology that wants to have a lifestyle here, and we can provide them housing. We need more housing of every type, everywhere in Alaska. We just need to have housing. And of course, you're looking at it at Girdwood and Holton Hills, right? So what's going to happen in Girdwood? Are we going to be able to build housing or not? There's a lot of, I want housing, but not next to me, the NIMBYs. The other case in point is we should build roads, but let's use an example. Do you remember the Elmore Road expansion between the hospitals and the university over to Burgaw? So we gave I remember Kevin Meyer gave the Anchorage administration $24 million, I think back in 2015-16, and Ethan Berkowitz had held some, community meetings, and they said, we don't want that road there. It's 1 mile. That's where we walk our dogs. So we said, screw it, we're not going to build it. So 1 mile of road to connect 2 hospitals and 2 big universities never got built. So, on one hand, well, let's go bring our kids back. Well, we need to build some roads. We need to build some housing. We need to, build some industry. We need to build some workforce development. And until we do that, people are going to go where states are doing those things.
What about broad-based taxes? Because your revenues, your picture there did not include any new additional revenue from those. Why shouldn't Alaskans pay for some of what they get?
I can't advocate a broad-based tax when we're paying a significant dividend. That is like taking your hard-earned, we're going to take your paycheck and we're going to deposit into your personal checking account. and then turn around and give everybody a check. We're not going to do that. That's dumb. So I will never support a broad-based tax of any kind or amount until we get the dividend more in line with what I advocated earlier. And even then, I will probably have to stick a couple fillet knives in my eye as I'm voting, if I ever get that opportunity to vote on the green button for while also paying a dividend. But if we can just get the dividend down, at least so we have, it's more sustainable over time.
Well, what about a sales tax? I mean, you know, your number of like I pointed out, the tourism related opportunities, at least a sales tax, other people help pay for it, other people pay it, or a seasonal sales tax.
So, and I understand, we've had all of these conversations and there are pros and cons to all of them. It's a judgment call. It's a philosophical call. There's no really right answer on this. My personal feeling is I don't really feel comfortable passing a tax at this time until we solve the permanent fund dividend calculation to something more modest.
So, and one person on that very point suggested that, or asked, do you think a statutory change to the dividend formula will end the debate, or does it need to be a constitutional change?
Well, I think that isn't the dividend, what part of it is in the Constitution and statute now? Let's just put it in, just do a statute change.
Right, it's a statute, it's currently in statute.
Yeah. I don't think we should put any economic calculation for anything in the Constitution.
Including POMV.
Except for that.
All righty. What time is it?
5 till.
Okay. What about on education? What can we do? What can the state do or school districts do to improve education, being more affordable when we have the other pressure of class sizes and teachers feeling they should be paid more?
So education is a tough one because it's very, very personal, because everybody has a school in their neighborhood or children or grandchildren, or their employees are graduates from public school, whatever, what have you. So Mark Foster and I spent a lot of time in the Anchorage School District together discussing this. And to me, what might make sense for the state of Alaska is to rethink how we deliver education, because it is extremely different in the urban versus rural. It's night and day. And what works in urban may or may not work in rural, and vice versa. Unfortunately, what we've done, as I remember this, is that we've created this school size formula to artificially push it down. So the least amount of kids that you have, you actually get more money. And that helps the rural schools. But then what happens in Anchorage is you got a bunch of elementary schools. So when Jim Browder came in as for his 1-year stint as superintendent, the one thing that he did, we walked around town, he's like, God dang, you guys got a lot of elementary schools. And that's because if you keep it at $250 or 250 students or less, you get a ton more money. So during my tenure, I passed a bill that says if you eliminate that school, or if you somehow change the education size or the size of students, you get a relief for a couple of years to kind of figure out how to readjust yourself. So one hand is we have mechanisms in place that reward a lot of infrastructure, which is very, very costly. Number one. Number two, what Mr. Foster and I have done is we've had the peak scores, the annual scores for the different schools and districts, and even down to the granular classroom. And those are material. It is one test on one day, pros and cons, but there are other ways to measure performance and to actually look and see which districts, which schools, and which teachers are getting it done. And until we actually shine a microscope on that and not just gloss over it and say, oh, she's tenured or he's tenured, it's fine, until we actually look and say, well, this person needs some extra help, some extra mentoring. They're not really effective. You've got 3 6th grade teachers, one's getting it done, 2 aren't. Let's go ahead and take a look at this to have some accountability. And after a year, perhaps, of this person working hard and he or she is not getting better, well, it's perhaps maybe education's not for you. And I think until we do something like that, it's very, very painful. But until we do something like that, I don't know how much how much we can change our education system.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and on a final note, spending cap. Why has this not happened? What was the debate when you had proposed it? What are the obstacles?
It's whether the permanent fund dividend should be under the cap or not. And as soon as you say that, in 2020 through 2022, with the Senate being so divided, we never met as a caucus, ever, in 2022. And that's because we couldn't get along. So as soon as you start, well, you should the dividend cap, no. So I was like, okay, well, I think it should be, and I'm not willing to negotiate. They're not willing to negotiate. So bad on all of us.
So is there a third rail to that discussion? This would be your opportunity to talk about citizens engaging in these issues, like we talked about on Monday.
So noted. So one of the things that we talk about, and Cheryl's absolutely right. One of the reasons why that there's polling out there or studies or something along that line is that we want to hear what people have to say. Not only that, but we also want to hear what like a wide variety of people have to say, not just the few that are motivated to come in and scream on the telephone or what have you. Mm-hmm. So by having citizen engagement in all sorts of fashions, it is a way to inform the legislators and help them feel comfortable and more confident when they make those votes. So I think citizen engagement is incredibly important, and you're absolutely right. And I'm sorry I didn't bring that up, but it is the third rail. It's the legislature, it's the governor, and it's the citizens together creating Alaska on how you want it to be. What do you want it to look like? Let's all speak up and participate.
Thank you. Okay, we're at our end of our program today. Want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you especially Senator von Imhof for sharing your thoughts, your ideas, your aspirations for us as a state. We're going to, with our fiscal policy study group on the 20th, we're going to meet and hear from Neil Steininger, who's the governor's OMB director, and talk about the governor's proposal. And then the following week, we're going to hear from Alexi Painter, who is the director of the Legislative Finance Division, with his comments about the governor's proposal. So we're getting our underpinnings to do some continued work on fiscal related issues. We'll share more about some of what we're thinking in terms of the permanent fund, the dividend, and how we as citizens can try and move this issue along. So yes, Kathy. Well, that we're in negotiations on that. So no, it probably will be at 8 a.m. It'll probably, we're emailing this morning about, texting about it being a Zoom, since they're in Juneau. It'll probably be Zoom calls for these, but we'd like to get back to in-person discussions, because we think as we work through and talk through ideas, that's a lot more engaging to have in a real people setting. And if we do that, my preference is not at 8 a.m.
Is then legislator can listen to your conversations.
If it's at 8, I mean, a Zoom. Yes, we would do both. Is if we do in person, it would also Zoom, because we want to hear. Well, let's just keep talking. So we want to, with a focus on the permanent fund and the dividend, we want to invite those legislators who have sponsored bills for this session, bills that have traction, or we perceive have traction, to talk to us about them, so we can just educate ourselves about what they're thinking, their approach, et cetera. So that's going to be sort of, again, continuing our underpinnings about this issue. And I do think a spending cap definitely is going to get in here. Thank you for the preview of the issue and the challenge of convincing people, but it's definitely, as we heard, related to the dividend, so, and the earnings. So okay. What? So, okay, anything else? All right, Juanetta, anything else?
Thank you to everybody online and sponsors that have supported our programs throughout the last year.
Yeah, okay. All right, we stand adjourned. Oh, what, not quite. Yes, sir.
very last public response, I think we all, with that presentation, how good it was, we owe her a standing ovation.
All right. Okay, take the mic away from her because we won't get away. No, thank you all.